Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. Today I wanted to cover a few of the medicinal trees and how to identify them. As you know, my last book was all about medicinal trees and their uses. And the reason I wanted to go ahead and address this a little bit is because next week I have a huge announcement. And, it's going to change the course of the show a little bit. We'll still be identifying more herbs by their plant families. But this book is, it's really cool, I think, honestly. It's called Herbal Medicine for Preppers, Homesteaders, and Permaculture People. It covers everything you need to know in most situations you would encounter in an emergency or in your homestead, on your farm, in your family circle, and talks about the principles of applying permaculture to herbal medicine. It's really good. I cover a lot of herbal first aid. I cover a lot of herbs for common ailments that you might have at home. And I talk about growing herbs and herbal energetics and a whole lot of things. And I'm really looking forward to it. That book will be released probably the middle of this week. I will put out an announcement on my blog and on the website, everywhere you can find me. But next week's podcast is where I'm really going to announce that and roll it out and read some excerpts from it. You're going to find this book to be incredibly useful. I think it is. I think it's an essential on everybody's shelf, whether you're an herbalist or not. I've written it so it would be accessible to people that don't know how to use herbs, who have never used herbs before, and also for people who are very familiar with herbs. The mindset of this book is basically like it should be your go-to manual before or when something happens. I wanted something that could help people, like, you know, so many people are concerned with supply chain disruptions right now. Maybe if you're living in a state where they have the vaccine mandates and you don't have your vaccine, and you can't go to a doctor, you can't uh, even enter a pharmacy to get something. Well, the mindset of this book is how to prepare for such situations, how to incorporate into your lifestyle so you're not just always preparing for emergencies, and to be able to identify wild plants around you. Because in a bad situation, you couldn't go to a health food store, you couldn't order something off of Amazon. Who knows? It could be anything from a hurricane to, like, last year where there was no toilet paper on the shelves for no apparent reason. The supply chain was messed up. It could be so many different things. We're having sunspot activities right now. The sun is more active than it normally is, and it sends out these solar flares. About 100 years ago, there was a big one, a pretty big one, and it fried all the telegraph wires. Those were the main means of communications. There wasn't a lot of electricity, but what there was, it just blew up. It burst into flames. If we had a serious solar flare, which, scientists say is actually far more likely than not, we might be offline. We might have serious trouble even communicating with each other, no cell phone, no way to order something and have it delivered to your door, probably no mail delivery. I mean, it could be bad, right? So I wrote this book with the idea in mind that if something happened, I want people to be able to just walk out their door and find the plant they need for that purpose. They'd be able to walk outside and find a plant that would help with their blood pressure, for instance. A plant that would help stop an infection, disinfect a wound, antiviral plants, antibiotic plants, plants to stop bleeding, right? And then, so many things you just experience around your house, your home, your homestead, if you have one every day, from colds, flus, various things just people experience regularly in their families. And I talk a lot about herb gardening as well and how you can grow these herbs in your landscape so that if you're not where you can forage or wildcraft, if you're not really good at plant ID in the wilderness, well, you've got the plants you need. You thought ahead, you got the seeds, and you have them growing in your garden right outside your back door. So again, this book is called Herbal Medicine for Preppers, Homesteaders, and Permaculture People. And it will be out within the next few days, probably midweek. You can start ordering it. I'm not taking pre-orders on it, so when you order it, you'll be able to get it immediately. That's the goal. Looking forward to that. Let's talk about a few medicinal trees. And one of the ones that's really interesting, I talk about it a lot in my book on medicinal trees, is the Magnolia family. I'm from the South, and magnolias are just emblematic of the South. And in the mountains where I live, we don't have the big Magnolia grandiflora like they have in I guess, from about the Piedmont going east, and of course, clear down, into Georgia and Alabama and all that. They have these big, gorgeous um, magnolia trees with these big, shiny leaves and huge lemon-scented blossoms. When I went to college at the University of Georgia, there was there is nothing that stands out in my memory about a summer night more than the smell of um, magnolia blossoms mixed with gardenia and honeysuckle in that hot, sultry, humid air of a Georgia night. And it brings back some of the best memories of my life just to smell that. But where I live in the mountains, we have what's called the cucumber tree. It's a magnolia. It has much smaller flowers. They're not as showy, and the seed pods look like little cucumbers. There are several varieties. There's one in Virginia that's almost in between the two. It's smaller than the Magnolia grandiflora, but it's a little bigger flower than the Magnolia cucumber tree where I live. These are very useful plants. Another one that's in the same family is the tulip tree. And tulip tree is another one of our southern trees mostly, and it's all over the place. I probably will be doing a video on this one soon before the leaves start browning for the fall so you can get a chance to see it. The tulip tree especially was really used a lot in early America and during the Civil War as a substitute for quinine. It was helpful against malaria. So let's go ahead and get into that because these are very useful plants. And again, it's one we take for granted, and these are super easy to identify. Thomas Elpel in Botany in a Day says of the magnolia family, the trees and shrubs of the magnolia family are distinctive with their showy flowers and cone-like structure where the seeds develop. Botanically, there are three sepals and three or more petals, although the sepals and petals may be difficult to distinguish from one another in some species. The flowers are bisexual with numerous stamens arranged in a spiral, plus numerous simple pistils also arranged in a spiral to make the cone in the center of the flower. The pistils are positioned superior to other parts. Each pistil matures into a follicle, a unicarpellate capsule with a seam down the side. In the Magnolia genus, the seeds sometimes fall free from the follicle and hang suspended from a fine thread. Worldwide, there are 12 genera and about 230 species in the family. The tulip tree and magnolia are native to the eastern states, but magnolias are often planted in the West Coast communities. So let's start with magnolia. This is the one, if you ever watched old Disney movie like Song of the South. Actually, I think they banned that. A little bit of cancel culture there. You remember the big magnolia blossoms, or maybe Chevy Chase in that Fletch movie where he goes down to Mississippi and inherits an old plantation house. He says, "Ah, sweet magnolia." It's just if you think of the South, you're thinking magnolias. All right, magnolia. The bark of magnolia is known for its aromatic and astringent properties. Tea of the bark is used medicinally as a diaphoretic. Remember, that helps break a fever, induces sweating, and for indigestion or diarrhea. Reportedly, drinking the tea can help break the tobacco habit. I've also been told that people would take the inner bark, you take the bark and kind of scrape off the inner bark and chew it um, if they were used to chewing tobacco, and it would take away the urge for tobacco. I don't know. I have no addictive tendencies to tobacco, so I've never had to try it. But if you do, that may be a good thing to try. Tulip tree is Liriodendron. He says some Native Americans ate the bark to expel worms and gave the seeds to children for the same purpose. The tulip tree has also been used to reduce fevers, as a diuretic, and for rheumatism. The root has been used in Canada to take away the bitterness in brewing alcohol. Let me get a little more information from my book on that. And well, let's see, I think I was quoting from a couple of different sources here. Yeah, we've got some really good information here on tulip tree, or which is also called tulip poplar. There was some Native American use of this tree as an herb that was believed to be particular to the heart. It has a tonic effect, cleaning plaque slowly from the inside of arteries, so it's useful for hardening of the arteries. A tincture is made by soaking strips of the inner bark in strong alcohol. This is good for people recovering from stroke, people with pre-heart attack conditions, or those who have suffered several heart attacks and or a bypass. And that comes from Native Plants, Native Healing. I mentioned that book before. Um, but Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests is one of the most useful books, especially for anyone living in the South. It's just an incredible book. The entire South was blockaded during the Civil War. They couldn't get food in, they couldn't get cloth in, they couldn't get medicine of any kind in. The Confederacy hired a French botanist, and he went through all of our native plants and found every single use for every single thing that grows in the South. It's a phenomenal book. It's of course written around 1860 or so, long out of print. See if you can get a copy. There are some good facsimiles that people have started putting together, and it's just absolutely incredible the volume of information in this book. I mean, every single thing that grows in the southern states that could be used for food, medicine, textiles, you name it, and for wood. He talks about which trees have the best wood for carving or for different purposes. He said of tulip tree, he called it the tulip-bearing poplar, but it's also Liriodendron. And willow bark supplied remedies for fevers met in camp. A cold infusion was given. And is tonic, diuretic, and diaphoretic, and is generally considered one of the most valuable of the substitutes for Peruvian bark. Now, Peruvian bark was cinchona. That's where they got quinine from malaria. So this was considered one of the best, if not the best, substitutes for quinine. It has been employed as a warm sudorific in the treatment of chronic rheumatism and gout, and Bigelow thinks it valuable as a stomatic. It was administered by Dr. Young and himself combined with laudanum. Laudanum is opium tincture, which he also describes how to make in this book, in hysteria. And the former says that in all materia medica, he does not know of a more certain, speedy, and effectual remedy for that disease. Well, yeah, I think laudanum might help with hysteria a little bit. See his letter to Governor Clayton. Okay. He says he is never known to fail in a case of worms. Another botanist says the seeds are laxative and the leaves are used as an external application for headache. They are washed and applied to the forehead. Murat, that was another botanist, states it has useful vermifuge properties, is employed in relaxed states of the stomach and advanced stages of dysentery. So you could see how this would be very useful in camp where dysentery and various stomach upsets and worms were really common in the really bad conditions. It was often combined with dogwood, which is Cornus florida, well, both to help against viruses, malaria type conditions. It was used as a tonic for horses as well. King's American Dispensary from 1898 says the tulip tree bark is aromatic and stimulant, is tonic, and has proved beneficial in intermittent chronic rheumatism, chronic gastritis, and intestinal diseases. Worm and hysteria combined with a small amount of laudanum, it is said to be speedy, certain, and effectual, and also to abate the hectic fever, night sweats, diarrhea of the fifth. That's one of those words I can't say. We'll just go with diarrhea. The warm infusion is diuretic. It is now seldom used, however. And Plants for Future said of it, this is far more modern, the intensely acrid, bitter bark, especially of the roots, is used domestically as a diuretic, tonic, and stimulant. The raw green bark is chewed as an aphrodisiac. The bark contains tulipferin, which is said to exert powerful effects upon the heart and nervous system. Tea is used in the treatment of indigestion, dysentery, rheumatism, coughs, fevers, etc. Externally, the tea is used as a wash and a poultice on wounds and boils. The root, bark, and seeds have been used to expel worms from the body. So, obviously, just a super helpful medicinal tree, a tree herb. It always confuses people because we think of herbs as little green plants, but often trees are among our best herbal medicine. And since we had mentioned the willows as also being helpful for fever, I'll just go ahead and run through how to identify willow. I think everybody can identify a weeping willow. Poplar, however, by the way, tulip poplar is not a true poplar, but poplar is. The family of poplar contains also the trees cottonwood and aspen, and they can pretty much be used interchangeably with willow. And some people actually prefer the poplars to willow. The willow is where we got salicin, which was eventually synthesized in Germany and became aspirin. So obviously these are very good for helping to reduce fevers and helping with pains and rheumatism, and that's why they would be combined with tulip poplar, which has similar effects. Mr. Elpel says it would be hard to miss the willow family. You can usually find either willows, aspens, cottonwoods, or poplars along any stream, lake, or mountain meadow. Botanically, the willow family consists of bushes and trees with simple, alternate leaves. The flowers are unisexual, with male and female flowers appearing in catkins on separate plants. The sepals are greatly reduced or absent. There are no petals. Male flowers have two or more stamens. The pistillate female flower, the ovary is positioned superior and consists of 2 to 4 united carpels forming a single chamber. It matures as a capsule, usually with silky cotton to help transport the seeds in the air. Worldwide, there are 2 to 3 genera and 350 to 500 species. I have trouble with that word genera. I've never been able to pronounce it even when I was in school, and the teacher would say it. I could not say it back properly. So you may hear me say genera, you may hear me say genera. It just does not flow easily for me. Medicinally, the willow family is analgesic, anti-inflammatory, astringent, and diuretic. The members of this family contain varying amounts of the simple phenol glycoside populin, salicin, and methyl salicate from which the common aspirin was originally derived. These properties are strongest in the inner bark but are also present in the leaves. Like aspirin, the willow family is used for fevers, headaches, arthritis, and other inflammations, particularly in the urinary tract. Unfortunately, the presence of tannic acid in the bark makes it difficult to ingest enough salicin to affect a common headache. A strong tea of the leaves might prove more effective without the bad taste. A strip of the bark can be tied over a cut to serve as a band-aid and as an astringent antiseptic. Members of the willow family may also expel worms. Recent studies have indicated that used as a long-term tonic, common aspirin can generally reduce a person's risk of heart disease or colon cancer in later life. Willow tea may or may not have the same potential. More research needs to be done in this area. Like aspirin, large quantities of willow can irritate the stomach lining. Well, willow and poplar are far less irritating to the stomach lining than your regular aspirin tablet, and often we will combine these with other herbs that also contain salicin. And these usually are the little green things. For instance, my co-author on the book, The Herbs and Weeds of Father Johann Kunzel, Jolanta Witte, she combines willow with meadowsweet. Meadowsweet is a nice calming herb that also has salicin. It can also be combined with violets, just common wild violets, or it can be violets you grow in your garden, like Johnny jump ups, or anything. Not an African violet though. African violets are not true violets; they're a totally different plant, and don't eat African violets. But the violets that grow wild in North America, wild in England, and most of Europe are edible and medicinal, and they contain salicin, and they combine well with willow. We'll start with willow. Willow is a commonly known wilderness medicine due to its aspirin-like qualities. It is used for headaches, fevers, hay fever, neuralgia, and inflammation of the joints. Some of the salicylic acid is excreted in the urine, making it useful as an analgesic to the urethra and bladder. Now, the populace, that is poplar, cottonwood, and aspen, is often thought to be a little stronger than willow, but it really just depends on where things are growing. The inner bark and sap of the cottonwood is reportedly sweet early in the spring and was eaten by Native Americans. Medicinally, the buds are diaphoretic, expectorant, and diuretic. The leaves were used as a poultice. Cottonwood and aspen leaf buds contain a sticky aromatic resin that can be collected early in the spring and used in an oil-based ointment for burns and skin irritations. It is commonly known as balm of Gilead. The buds are soaked in oil for a week to extract constituents. So, real easy plants to identify, very useful. And I think we should do one more and I'll wrap it up here. This is the juglans. This is walnuts. This is pecan or pecan, however you want to say it. This is hickory. These grow just wild all over the place around here. We have so many varieties of hickory trees you wouldn't believe it. We've got shagbark, we've got shellbark, we've got the pig nut, we've got the mockernut hickory, tons of hickory. Hickory has been used for a long time, especially to get rid of worms. But it also has some other really good qualities. It's very astringent. It can be used on wounds. Let's see what he says about this. Members of the walnut family are resinous, aromatic trees with alternate, pinnately divided leaves. The glandular dots beneath the leaves help to identify this family. The flowers are unisexual with male and female flowers appearing on the same tree. The male flowers are born in catkins, 3 to 6 sepals, 0 petals, 3 to 40 stamens. The female flowers have 4 sepals and 0 petals. The pistil is cenocarpous with 2 to 3 carpels fused together to make a single-chambered ovary, which matures as a single hard-shelled nut enclosed in a husk. Worldwide, there are about 6 genera and 60 species, mostly walnuts. Our natives are listed below. First of all is the carya, that's pecan, hickory, bitternut, and pignut. The hickory and its related species are processed and used similarly to walnuts, including that the trees may be tapped for syrup. That's one thing most people don't know about walnut and hickory and pecan trees is that you can tap them for syrup, just like you would a maple. Juglans is the walnut and butternut. There are about 20 species of walnuts in the world. They all produce edible nuts, but of varying quality. Yes, this is definitely sure. Compared to English walnuts, the black walnuts are mostly shell with only a little meat inside. The job of cracking the shells and picking out the meat with a sharp stick seems only marginally productive. Well, I told him in my fall foraging show, how I grew up with a big black walnut tree in the backyard at my grandparents' farm, and how very difficult those things are to shell. But they make the best black walnut ice cream. So good. Definitely worth it. He says one author recommends gathering the nuts in the fall and drying them before removing the husks. After husking, the nuts should be crushed, then slowly boiled in water. The oil and nut meats rise to the top, while the shells settle at the bottom. The oil and meats can be used separately or blended together to make walnut butter. The trees can also be tapped for syrup in the springtime. Walnut husks are rich in tannins, especially useful for dye. The butternuts make a rich purple dye, while the black walnut gives a black dye. Boil the husk to extract the pigment. Medicinally, the leaves, bark, and husks are rich in tannic acids with some bitter components. Walnut is used mostly as an astringent, but also as a vermifuge. That means it gets rid of parasites. Internally to get rid of worms, externally for ringworm fungus. The green husk is rich in vitamin C. Butternut bark contains naphthoquinone, a laxative. Well, I think there's actually a lot more we could say about the walnuts than what he said. I'm just going to pull up a quick reference. And the other interesting thing about walnuts, and the reason they're called juglans, is because they put off a chemical from their roots called juglone, which actually discourages other plants from growing around them. It can actually kill some plants. It's funny, someone said one time, isn't it a shame people can't get along the way plants do? You know, you don't think of plants fighting each other, do you? But juglone, the walnuts, they actually do put out a root exudate to compete and defeat other plants. So all is not peaceful, even in the plant world. I think one of the probably the most interesting um, entries on walnuts was from Saint Hildegard von Bingen, writing in about 1100, late 1000s. She said, "Take the leaves of this tree while they are fresh, squeeze the juice from them onto a place where maggots are eating a person, or where maggots or other worms are growing on him. Do this frequently, and they will die. The worms or maggots will die. But if the worms originate in the stomach, he should take the leaves of the walnut tree with the equal amount of peach tree leaves before the fruits are ripe, and pulverize them over a hot fiery stone. He should eat this powder often, either with an egg or in broth, or cooked with a bit of cereal. The worms in the stomach will die." So see, people were using walnut as a vermifuge or to get rid of worms, even back in the 1000s. She says if leprosy has begun to grow on someone, squeeze the juice from these leaves and add old fat to it, making an ointment. Where the leprosy is new on him, he should anoint himself with this near a fire. Without a doubt, he will be healed unless God does not wish it. One who has much phlegm in him should take that which exudes from the walnut tree, presumably with the sap, when its branches or rootstock are cut. He should cook it gently in wine with fennel and a little savory, strain it through a cloth, and drink it warm. It will throw off the phlegm, and he will be cleared out. One who has bad scabies on his head should take the outer skin of the walnut, that is its shell, I think she means the husk actually, and squeeze its juice over the wounds, that is, over the scabies on its head. When they have swollen up from the bitterness of the juice, he should anoint them with olive oil, which will check the bitterness. If he does this often, the scabies will be cured. John Gerard, the English herbalist writing in the 1500s, he says dry nuts taken fasting with a fig and a little rue will withstand poison, prevent and preserve the body from the infections of the plague, and being plentifully eaten will drive the worms forth from the belly. So they thought of it as pretty powerful medicine, to say the least. Maud Greaves in 1934 recommended the bark as a purgative. That means to clean you out. She talks a lot more about how it can be used against worms and various parasites and such. An Irish Herbal is actually a very interesting book. It's one of the few books written by a native Irishman, even though Ireland has a phenomenal tradition of herbal medicine. One of the first places that schools were opened and taught to preserve knowledge and promote knowledge after the fall of Rome. In fact, the one of the two saints, patron saints of herbal medicine, Saint Fiacre, who was an Irish herbalist who was so sought after, he basically fled to France to try to find some peace and quiet, and became a famous herbalist there. In the Irish herbal, it says this was written, I think, late 1700s. He says, just like Gerard did, two or three walnuts eaten with a fig and a little rue on an empty stomach provide prevention against infection. But then he goes on to say the kernel of the walnut, that's the nut itself, will heal bruises and scabby and itchy skin, and taken internally will break up the stone in the bladder and urinary crystals. A decoction of the green peel of the husk is useful against tumors and ulcers of the mouth or throat. The bark of the tree, either green, dried, or crushed, encourages vomiting. So that's that purgative effect that Miss Greaves had recommended. Let's get up to some more current information. Again, there's a huge entry from Southern Resources, Southern Fields and Forests, and King's American Dispensary, and all that good stuff. But let's see. Plants for Future says the walnut tree has a long history of medicinal use, being used in folk medicine to treat a wide range of complaints. The leaves are alterative, that means gradually bringing a person to health, like a tonic. Anthelmintic, that means kills parasites. It's another one of those like anti-worm words. Anti-inflammatory, astringent, and depurative. They are used internally for the treatment of constipation, chronic coughs, asthma, diarrhea, dyspepsia. That's an upset stomach, by the way. The leaves are also used to treat skin ailments and purify the blood. They are considered to be specific in the treatment of strumous sores. I'm not sure what that means. Male inflorescences, that's the flowers, the catkins, are made into a broth and used for the treatments of coughs and vertigo. The rind is anodyne and astringent. It is used in the treatment of diarrhea and anemia. The seeds are diuretic and stimulant and used internally in the treatment of low back pain. Again, that's the nuts. Frequent urination, weakness in the leg. So that would say they're supportive of the kidneys, actually. Chronic cough, asthma, constipation due to dryness or anemia, and stones in the urinary tract. Externally, they are made into a paste and applied as a poultice to areas of dermatitis and eczema. Oil from the seeds is anthelmintic. It is also used in the treatment of menstrual problems and dry skin conditions. The cotyledons are used in the treatment of cancer. Walnut has a long history in folk use in the treatment of cancer, and some extracts of the plant have shown anti-cancer activities. The bark and root bark are anthelmintic, astringent, and detergent. The plant is also used in Bach flower remedies. So, as we can see, it's just a really useful plant. And, when I was a kid, I was always told that the horses would eat some of the walnut leaves to help treat themselves for worms. I don't know if that's true or not, but, hey, why not? So there you have it. Those are the plants we're going to cover this week, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Remember to look forward to my big book announcement later this week and buy my book. You're going to love this one. This one really is cool. And I wrote it in more of the way that I do this show, a little more lighthearted, but with a lot of information packed in. You can really hear my voice come through it. That's what I've been told by the couple people who've read it so far. They say it's like I'm really sitting there talking to them. And this is how I would teach you one-on-one in a class. I'm really giving you the information in a way that's understandable and useful and practical. I always say herbal medicine should be no different than growing a garden, working on odd jobs around the house, doing your own home improvement. It's practical. It's learning to do simple, practical things so that you don't have to rely on others. So, y'all have a great week and see you next time. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.